There's a danger in patterns, especially when the desert starts offering them up. Over the course of this season, we've walked the highways of the Great Basin, I-15, I-80, I-93, tracing bodies left in sagebrush and gravel turnouts. We've examined clusters, timelines, geography. We've asked whether one offender could have hunted these corridors in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But tonight we slow down because not every body found near a highway belongs to the same story. In March of 1991, a nude, decomposed woman was found off Interstate 15 near the Mills exit in Juab County, Utah. She was a Jane Doe, another desert body, another woman discarded along asphalt and wind, and for years, she was folded into what people began calling the Great Basin murders. But her name was Barbara Kaye Williams. She wasn't killed by a roaming highway predator. She was killed by her husband. 8 years passed before she was identified. 8 years where she existed in records only as Jane Doe 2. It took interagency comparison, fingerprints, and someone willing to revisit an old Florida file to finally connect her to a life that had quietly disappeared. Barbara's case forces a difficult question. When we build a serial narrative, what happens to the outliers? Because she wasn't the only one grouped under that umbrella. On April 2nd, 1991, just days after Barbara's body was discovered, Ermalinda Garza Sherman was found dead on the roadside south of St. George, Utah. 32 years old, native, shot multiple times in the head, severely beaten, killed shortly before her body was discovered. Her case remains unsolved. She is often listed among the Great Basin victims. But is she truly part of that pattern? Or are we grouping by geography alone? And then there's Unidentified Person 7519. A middle-aged woman found in June of 1990 in sagebrush near West Wendover, Nevada, roughly a quarter mile off Highway 93, wearing a purple polyester pantsuit, decomposed, unnamed, unclaimed. More than 3 decades later, she remains a number in a database. No suspect, no identification, no public cause of death beyond homicide. She is frequently associated with the Great Basin cluster, but what do we actually know? This episode isn't about introducing the Great Basin serial killer theory all over again. We've done that work. Tonight is about testing it, about the women who complicate the pattern and the cases that don't fit cleanly, and how easily geography becomes an assumption, and about the responsibility that we carry as investigators, as storytellers, to make sure that in our search for one predator, we don't blur the truth of 3 very different lives, because the desert keeps its secrets, but sometimes we create our own. Hey, Angela, how's it going tonight?
Hi, John. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I don't know if you realized it or not, but this is the episode that you've been waiting for a while.
Yeah.
So
it made my eyes well up a little bit.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. This one sucks ass.
Yeah.
So
we will name her. Mark my words.
Man, I hope so.
We will name her.
That is a goal. All right. Well, you ready to get into it?
Sure.
So welcome back, listeners. This is Dark Dialogue, Rocky Mountain Reckoning, the series where we return to the crimes rooted deep in the dirt and the snow of the American West, the ones that never left the hearts of the people who lived through them.
We investigate the stories buried under snowfall, prairie dust, and decades of unanswered questions. The ones whispered through cattle fences, past broken barbed wire stretches across open range, and along wind-lashed highways that seem to go on forever.
Tonight, we remain inside the Great Basin corridor, but we narrow our focus. Over this season, we've examined the pattern, the highways, the timelines, the clustering of women found in desert and sagebrush in the late 80s and early 90s. But patterns demand scrutiny because not everybody found on an interstate belongs to the same offender. Barbara Kaye Williams was discovered in March of 91 near Juab County, Utah, nude, decomposed, and unidentified. For years, she was only known as Jane Doe number 2 and was listed among the Great Basin victims, but she was not killed by a highway predator. We're going to find out that she was killed by her husband. And after 8 years, she was identified. So tonight is not about building the Great Basin theory. We've done that work. Tonight is about pressure testing it.
So before we begin, if you value long-form, evidence-driven investigations, the kind that slow down, examine primary sources, and separate proof from assumption, take a moment to support the show. Follow Dark Dialogue on your podcast platform, hit subscribe on YouTube, give this episode a thumbs up, and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Those reviews matter more than most people realize. They tell the platforms to push serious, investigative content instead of surface-level noise.
And share this episode with someone who believes details still matter, especially when decades-old cases are being evaluated in real time.
All right, Angela, why don't you tell us where we're headed tonight?
Before we get into the individual cases, it helps to understand the geography that connects them. The Great Basin is one of the largest geographic regions in the American West. It stretches across most of Nevada and into western Utah, southern Idaho, and parts of California and Oregon. What defines it is something unusual. Water that falls here never reaches the ocean. Instead, it collects in isolated basins between long mountain ranges, a landscape known as basin and range topography. That means wide desert valleys separated by rugged ridgelines with enormous distances between towns. The 3 locations discussed in this episode sit along the eastern edge of that system, in Nevada and western Utah. West Wendover, Nevada, where unidentified person number 7519 was found, sits directly on the Utah-Nevada border along the U.S. Highway 93, a major north-south route that has long connected Idaho, Nevada, and Arizona. Roughly 200 miles southeast, Interstate 15 cuts through Juab County, Utah, near the Mills exit where Barbara Kaye Williams was discovered. I-15 is one of the most important transportation corridors in the western United States, running from the Canadian border through Montana, Idaho, Utah, Nevada, and all the way to Southern California. Continue farther south, about 250 miles from Juab County, and you'll reach St. George, Utah, the largest city in the state's southwest corner, where Ermalinda Garza Sherman was found near a desert roadway just outside of town. So while these locations may look scattered on a map, they are actually tied together by the same transportation corridor system. Highways that cross vast stretches of open desert where towns are small, distances are long, and traffic moves quickly. Population density across much of this region remains extremely low. Outside of cities like St. George, travelers can drive for dozens of miles between communities, passing sagebrush plains, dry lake beds, and isolated stretches of highway where visibility extends for miles in every direction. That remoteness is part of what defines the Great Basin, a landscape shaped by distance, by desert, and by long roads connecting widely separated towns. And it's that geography that places all 3 of these cases within the same broad corridor of the American West.
January 6th, 1990. Near Wendover, Nevada, just off Highway 93, the land flattens into open sagebrush and pale sand. The interstate hum is distant here. Civilization is measured in miles. A man riding horseback moves through the brush, and then he sees it. Human remains. A woman decomposed, left in open desert roughly a quarter mile from the highway. No shelter, no concealment beyond the distance. She's estimated to be middle-aged, somewhere between 50 and 59 years old. She's wearing a purple polyester pantsuit. That detail survives, the fabric, the color, but her name does not. She's entered into the system as Unidentified Person 7519. No public cause of death detail beyond homicide, no confirmed suspects, no missing persons match, just coordinates in the desert, just a number in a database. Highway proximity again. 1 year later, and hundreds of miles south along the same corridor, another woman would be found off Interstate 15 in Utah. And then another. But in June 1990, there is only the desert, a purple pantsuit and sagebrush, and a woman who has no name. In the Great Basin, geography creates patterns, sometimes before we fully understand them. This is a tough one. It's been a tough one for months now, and I've tried everything. There's just nothing. All available details surrounding the discovery of unidentified person number 7519 are extremely limited. So what follows is absolutely everything that can be confirmed through open records and any official listings, and nothing beyond that. So on June 6, 1990, a private citizen was on his horse. He was riding in the desert south of West Wendover, Nevada. While riding through open sagebrush terrain, he came upon human remains. The location is documented with reasonable precision. The body was found approximately a quarter-mile west of Highway 93A, now incorporated into the US 93 corridor, and roughly 2 miles south of West Wendover. Yeah, I mean, I was able to map exactly where she was found at, and I mean, it's not very far out of town. It's just kind of in between two roads, not very far out of town at all. It's not nearly as remote as one would have envisioned.
It's terrible.
Places her where her body was found, places her in the Great Basin desert, but within easily walking distance of a major north-south highway, but far enough from the roadway to be out of immediate view of passing traffic. When discovered, the remains were already decomposed. Public sources do not specify the exact postmortem interval, only that she had been deceased for some time prior to June 6, 1990. Because of decomposition, public records focus on broad demographic identifiers rather than any kind of detailed scene observations. She's listed as a white female, estimated to be between 50 and 59 years old at the time of her death, which puts her considerably older than the vast majority of the Jane Does that we've visited this season.
Yeah.
There's no publicly available description of her position when found, whether she was face up or face down. There's no released information detailing visible injuries at the scene. One detail is consistently documented. She was wearing a purple polyester pantsuit. No publicly accessible records list any additional clothing details, jewelry, purse contents, or any personal effects. So if those items were cataloged in the full investigative files, they have not been released in any of the summary materials that are available on the public-facing site of NamUs. So I also could not find her cause of death, whether gunshot wounds, blunt force, trauma, or other injury. There's literally a paragraph about this poor woman. I mean, a paragraph.
That sickens me.
It's unbelievable is what it is. And honestly, we're going to be to the next one here pretty soon with Ermalinda Garza Sherman, and it's going to be exactly the same thing. I do not understand it. I don't understand why there's not more information. It's just crazy to me.
Do we know where the remains are now? Or am I foreshadowing?
No, there is no foreshadowing in this case because we know nothing.
So they found them, but we don't know where they are.
They probably threw them in a pauper's grave. As terrible as that sounds, that's about it.
Breaks my heart.
So I'm going to tell you absolutely every single thing that I was able to find. She died somewhere between 1985 and 1990. She was a female. She was white and roughly 5'5" tall. No weight. Found by a passerby who was horseback riding. Decedent was located at U.S. mile marker 52, 2 miles south of Wendover, Nevada, 975 feet west of the U.S. 93 center line. All of her parts were recovered. No condition of remains is listed. Bleached, straw-colored hair, approximately 9 inches in length. Some sections without bleach is red-brown in color. No eye color. No physical descriptions. A purple Sears and Roebuck polyester pantsuit, size 18T. Bra, sleeveless t-shirt, Lord James. Shirt, purple socks, tattered underpants. Low suede boots, no size or label. And a Timex analog quartz watch with a white face and black Arabic numbers. That's it. And then I've got, I've got like the medical examiner number and the Elko County Sheriff's Office number. And that is literally 100% of what is available publicly on this poor woman.
Okay.
We know that she's obviously been dead long enough for decomposition to obscure any immediate identification. It's odd to me, as close to the road as she was found, that they list her time of death within a 5-year span, 1985 to 1990.
Like a dump, maybe? Like somebody dumped?
It's almost certainly a body dump, but I mean, it was probably dumped shortly after the time of death. So it's weird. Mm-hmm. It's really weird to me that there's no better estimate of a time of death than that.
Yeah.
And so
no missing persons to somewhat match it up to, because this is 90. And I realize it's not 2026, but we're getting closer in 90 to at least throw out some sort of a missing person.
One of the biggest problems that I have in this case is, shit, man, that description could match any missing person that's a female.
It really could.
I mean, we don't even know weight. Like an 18T, I think that's a larger size for a woman, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So from that, we can guess that she was maybe a little heavier set woman, but we don't even have an estimated weight. That's very rare in coroner files and like missing persons descriptions. You almost always have an estimated physical description or a good reason why not. Only a few remains were found. They've been scattered by animals. Fire destroyed much of the evidence. There's not much left. But usually, if you find a body and it, well, I can't even say shit. I can't say anything, but because again, normally if they're like scattered all over and they only found a couple bones, it says that.
Yeah.
It doesn't even say that.
It said all of the pieces. It found all of the pieces, what you read.
Did I read that?
Yeah.
That her full skeletal remains were found? So, yeah, I mean, the condition of remains is listed as not recognizable, near complete or complete skeleton.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can assume, I guess, that most of her was found.
How tall?
5'5".
5'5".
So,
doesn't really explain the T, because T means tall. So.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I don't know women's.
So
obviously.
And it would mean like longer than a 29 to 31 inch inseam.
Okay. I don't know. And then you have the other thing that's like tattered boots and holey underwear. Again, it's like, okay, so we have this body that's laying out here for maybe 5 years, or her underwear tattered because she's been laying in a borrow ditch for the last 5 years, or because she's possibly indigent and homeless, in which case she's wearing whatever clothes she can get her hands on. They might be too big on her, might be too small on her, but we don't know.
Or possibly they're not hers, or they were damaged in how she died.
Yeah, there's nothing. And I look at a lot of NamUs records. Some of them are relatively sparse. Most of them have a lot more information than this. We've already covered some, pretty bad ones as far as like
Yeah.
Devil's Gate Jane Doe, who was lit on fire, and, Star Valley Jane Doe, who was found in 1972, way before this and had laid out there for an extended period of time. We know way more about those victims. We have a better physical description. I mean, at least we know something. So I got nothing unless it's just, I don't know.
Kind of feeling moved to adopt this woman and do everything that I can. This is the one you said, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but you keep saying this is the one that bothers me because she's just a number, and I hate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that really bothers me. From this week, we're going to move it back into Wyoming, and we're going to be talking about 2 Jane Does who were later identified, but at least one was called the I-90 Jane Doe, and the other was called Betty Creek or Bitter Creek Betty. Like, is it better? I don't know. In my brain, it's better.
Yeah, to me, it feels like, okay, I know it's a nickname, and Bitter Creek Betty might seem derogatory to some. I-90 Jane Doe might seem derogatory, but at least they tried.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is where I think it really strikes home, and this is why I think it matters. And that is exactly the conversation that we're having, because when you hear Arroyo Grande Jane Doe, Bitter Creek Betty, I-90 Jane Doe, it makes them a human. It makes them tangible to you. It makes them somebody. When they're a number, they're easy to forget. They're easy to throw in a pauper's grave and never think of again, because all it is UP 7519. Because unidentified person gets shortened to UP.
Yeah.
So her name, in quotes, is UP 7519, which that's a tough one to swallow for me. It really is. She's one of thousands.
Yeah. And honestly, you just struck a chord with me, which is, it's going to be a leap of a comparison, but I'm going to do it anyway. Even when stray animals are found and they're put in a humane society, they're given a name.
Yeah.
They're given a name. They're not White Dog 247.
Yeah, and
they're given a name, and it might be a cheesy name, but are we really treating our animals, and I'm saying this as an animal lover.
Yes, we are.
We're treating our animals with more respect than our unidentified humans.
Yeah, and
I'm sickened.
The interesting thing is, the investigating agency is listed as the Elko County Sheriff's Office, which is the same investigating agency for a shit ton of these that we've covered this year, and they still got more coming. So I don't know, but jurisdiction for this case falls under Nevada State and the local authorities in Elko County and the West Wendover area. And like I said,
letters in my future.
NamUs lists, and maybe and I didn't do that, but maybe this is a good one for FOIA requests on. I don't know that we'd get anything, but maybe it's worth trying, But beyond like that, there's so much in her NamUs profile that's just blank. And even in this, it kind of pisses me off a little bit. Just flat out pisses me off a little bit, because NamUs is submitted by the agencies. NamUs isn't an organization that's running around finding these cases and entering the information. The law enforcement agencies have to enter this data. That's what I struggle with, because I'm going to read to you exactly what was completed by the investigating agency. Elko County Sheriff's Office. Address, blank. Nevada. County, blank. Phone number, blank. Email, blank. Website, blank. Case number 901361. Date reported June 11th, 1990. They couldn't even fill out the information. Like, if somebody has information about this is how you get in contact with this.
Yeah.
They They don't even bother to fill out the shit that they actually know, which is their own phone number. So
and county and address. And yeah.
I mean, it pisses me off. At least for the Washoe County Regional Medical Examiner's Office. And I don't understand how all of this works, how Elko County can be, and this is what I don't know. It doesn't make sense. There's a lot about this case that doesn't make sense, but I got their address, at least, and a main phone number and a website for them.
Send it to me.
So, I don't know. I mean, but beyond what I just said, and I just went through the nameless profile, beyond that, the record, very thin. It's pretty reasonable to assume that in 1990, the standard forensic procedures for an unidentified homicide were hopefully conducted. That would have included documenting the scene, I would hope, to some degree, recovery of remains and clothing, autopsy, and the collection of maybe any biological or trace evidence present, but who knows? There's nothing about cause of death, nothing gunshots, nothing. There's nothing. We know that her NamUs entry was created in 2021, and that represents the formal, that represents her case being digitized, at least in a centralized database at some point in 2021. So that move does not indicate any sort of a resolution. It just means that the case is now accessible in that national comparison system. It's late. It's a late entry for NamUs. I mean, we're only talking 5 years ago. So yeah, her inclusion in the Great Basin murders is based on the contextual similarities, the time frame, proximity to a major highway, the remote disposal. But again, we've talked about it all season long. I don't know. I mean, everybody we're going to be talking about tonight is kind of in a regional cluster for sure, and they kind of go all over the place. I will say that she is included in Lily Martina Lee's shroud collection for the Great Basin victims, and so you can actually go on Lily Martina Lee's website and look at UP7519's shroud. But in recent years, there's been some renewed interest in the case.
Not just us.
I mean, Lily Martina Lee has done a tremendous amount, way more than us, to bring focus to these Great Basin murders.
Oh, I wasn't saying like that. I was being facetious. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine. But I'm just saying that's really who I'm referring to here when I'm talking about this attention, because she has really drawn a lot of attention to these victims.
Good.
Because, she does these shrouds and she always incorporates something in particular about that victim, and she photographs the shroud at the location that the bodies were found. And then they do like these tours of museums and stuff. So it really helps spread this message to people that have no clue about any of this. But unfortunately, no resolution. As of 2026, the public record reflects the same empty fields that it has contained ever since it was entered into NamUs. So unfortunately, that's it. That's all I know. It's sad, but it's like getting blood from a turnip or whatever, right? I mean, if it's not there, it's just not there. March 22nd, 1991. Interstate 15 runs through Juab County, Utah. Long stretch of pavement cutting through open land near the Mills exit. Sparse structures, wide shoulders, gravel turnouts that disappear into the scrub. Traffic moves fast here. Drivers don't linger. Off the interstate beyond the asphalt and into the brush, a body is found. Female, nude, decomposed. She's been there long enough for exposure to take its toll. No identification at the scene, no immediate name, just another woman left near another western highway. In the early 90s, that detail matters. Interstates, remote, female victim. The region is already beginning to accumulate cases that look similar. Bodies found near desert corridors, often close to major roadways. This one again is logged as a Jane Doe, another file in a growing stack. For years, she remains unidentified. No confirmed missing person match, no family stepping forward publicly. In summaries and in later discussions, she is folded into this developing narrative of the Great Basin serial killer. And it makes sense. Geography aligns, the timeline aligns, circumstances appear to align, but alignment is not proof. Her name was Barbara Kaye Williams, and the truth of her death would eventually dismantle one piece of the pattern. So like I said, on March 22nd, 1991, a woman's body was discovered near the I-15 Mills exit in Juab County, Utah, roughly 80 to 90 miles south of Salt Lake City. She was found not far off the interstate, not in a residence, not inside a vehicle, just another one near the highway. She was nude. The body was decomposed, indicating that she'd been deceased for some time prior to her discovery. Public summaries do not specify the exact postmortem interval, but the condition limited detailed public description of any visible injuries. Despite the decomp, investigators determined that she had died from at least one gunshot wound. Her death was treated as a homicide right from the very start. At the scene, the Juab County Sheriff's Office processed the remains and they collected fingerprints. That detail would later become very critical, but in 1991, there was no name to match them to. There was no immediate missing persons report in Utah that matched her, no family that stepped forward, so no identity. She entered Utah's cold case files simply as an unidentified female homicide victim within the growing regional discussion of women found near interstate corridors. Sheriff David Carter would later say that the case, quote, really bothered him, not only because it was unsolved, but because for years it appeared that no one seemed to be looking for her. For 8 years, she remained Jane Doe 2 in the Great Basin summaries. There's no details about who initially discovered her body. They don't detail her exact position relative to the highway. They don't describe clothing beyond the fact that she was nude. They do not mention bindings, drag marks, other scene indicators in the first response summaries. And again, she's been identified, so she has no name as profile. So a lot, it does limit how much information you can get without FOIA requests and stuff. But between 1991 and 1999, her case did not collapse, but it did stall. When her body was found, investigators processed the scene thoroughly. They collected the fingerprints, like I said. They classified the case as an unidentified homicide. The fingerprints were preserved, but, that preservation is not the same as identification. And the primary obstacle in the early years was not any lack of effort. It was absence of a missing persons report. Barbara's family in Florida had lost contact with her after she and her husband had left the state in 1990. Her mom was worried. She had spoken with law enforcement, but no formal missing persons report was filed in 1991. Without that report, there was no entry into any national systems that did exist. And so Sheriff David Carter would later say that, like I said, the case really bothered him. And he made periodic attempts over the years to determine who she was, but without a name to search and without a report to cross-reference, there was just little traction, no traction, really. So the case just remained exactly what it had been the day that she was found. An unidentified woman shot and dumped off the interstate, no one officially looking for her. But in 1997, that changed. Barbara's mother, after years without contact, finally filed a formal missing persons report in Florida. That report entered Barbara into Florida's records as a longtime missing adult, and for the first time, she became data, a name and a system, a profile that could be compared. So the break came when Agent Bill Guti of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement began reviewing older unresolved missing person cases. As he examined Barbara Kaye Williams' file, he noticed that her physical characteristics, her height, weight, general build, aligned closely with an unidentified woman who'd been found in Juab County, Utah, years earlier. So Guti reached out to Sheriff Carter and made the suggestion that the two cases could possibly involve the same person. Juab County compared the fingerprints that they'd taken from the body and compared those with fingerprint records that were held in Florida for Barbara, and they matched. So 8 years after she was found, the Jane Doe off I-15 finally had a name: Barbara Kaye Williams. For Sheriff Carter, the identification resolved that part of the case that had troubled him the most, the feeling that nobody was missing her. It also changed the direction of the investigation immediately. Once Barbara had a name, investigators could then examine her life, her last known movements, her relationships, and very quickly attention turned to her piece of shit husband, Howell Williams. By the time Barbara was identified, this asshat was already incarcerated in Florida on a parole violation, so that made him very accessible. In early 1999, shortly after the fingerprint confirmation, Juab County filed an aggravated murder charge and began extradition proceedings to bring his sorry ass back to Utah. What had once appeared to be just another roadside homicide in this developing corridor pattern was now something else entirely. Not a roaming highway predator, but a husband, and a domestic homicide that had been sitting in the desert for 8 years under the wrong narrative. So there's not a lot that's known about this piece of shit, but there is enough to establish his background, his criminal history, and how he was handled once Barbara was identified. So he's referred to as Howell Williams Jr., and Howell Monroe Williams Jr. And he was Barbara Kaye Williams' husband. In 90, he and Barbara moved from Lake City, Florida to Utah. By the time of her death in March of 91, the couple were believed to be living in the Salt Lake City area. Before Utah ever charged him in connection with Barbara's murder, Howell had already had a criminal record in Florida. So I couldn't find any exact sentence length or any final disposition regarding like death penalty, or I couldn't find a lot, but more recent parole board documentation identifies him as under the Utah Department of Corrections, number 140327. So he's still incarcerated. At least
for this?
I would assume he's still incarcerated for this in Utah.
Okay.
So in the end, Barbara's case did not reveal a serial highway predator. It revealed a husband with a criminal history, a move across state lines, a domestic homicide that initially looked like part of something larger. But I included her in this for a couple reasons. Number one, she was included for all those years as a Great Basin homicide victim. So if you look at any of the lists, she's on it.
Right.
And so I felt that it was important that she be included here. And then because this entire series, we've said, this is not a single serial killer. We know that for an absolute fact.
Yeah.
I think it's important to include all of them. I mean, obviously we can't include every murder in the area during a certain, we'd be at this for years, but any of them that historically have belonged to this. And then there's some that I've pointed out that I feel should have been and never were. So, but anyway, there's not a lot of information about her, but at least we know who she was. We know the piece of shit that killed her, and we know that he got sentenced to prison, at least for that murder. So at least we know something.
Something, yeah.
April 2nd, 1991, southern Utah. South of St. George, the pavement gives way to open desert. Red dirt, scrub, and long stretches of roadway that thin out as you move away from town. A body is reported on the side of the road, not in deep backcountry, not hidden miles off grid, just off the roadway. Female, around 32 years old. She's been shot multiple times in the head. There's blunt force trauma. Investigators would later estimate that she'd been killed shortly before her body was discovered. Her name was Ermalinda Garza Sherman. She was native. She was also known as Linda Sherman, And unlike some of the other women found along the Great Basin corridors, she wasn't unidentified. She had a name. What she did not have was a suspect. So on April 2nd, 1991, officers were dispatched after a report of a deceased body in the desert south of St. George, Utah. Responding officers located the victim on the side of the road in a remote desert area, and it's not really that remote. It's not that far off the road. I mapped this one too, but it's just like Wyoming. I mean, you go in a lot of areas, like you go outside of Cody, you get a mile off the road and you're remote.
Yeah.
Like somebody might not happen across that area for years.
Right.
So she, again, was not found in a vehicle. She's not in a residence. She was lying on the roadside in open terrain. And by the time officers got there, she was already deceased. The official descriptions from the Utah Department of Public Safety state that she'd suffered multiple gunshot wounds to her head. In addition to the gunshot wounds, she had blunt force trauma, and she's been described as having been severely beaten with significant head injuries beyond just the gunfire. There's no suggestion that she was transported to a hospital and that she died later from. She was found dead. Unlike some of the other victims, she wasn't unidentified, but I gotta tell you what, there ain't shit about her.
Same old, same old.
Yeah, I'm gonna read you pretty much everything. So get comfortable, sit back. Ermalinda was 32 years old when her body was found on the side of the road in the desert south of St. George, Utah on April 2nd, 1991. She had multiple gunshot wounds to her head, as well as showing signs of blunt force trauma. Ermalinda was also known by the alias Linda Sherman. There are few details available in her case, and Ermalinda's murder remains unsolved. If you have any information regarding the murder of Ermalinda Garza, you are encouraged to contact the St. George Police at 435-627-4301. That's it. That is the official Utah release regarding this woman. And everything, it's another really odd one. I can't explain these, but it's extraordinarily odd because, I don't know, Sally goes missing now. And I mean, you know, I investigate cases all the time, literally all day, every day.
Yeah.
And pick one. Heather Elvis or Holly Bobo or, I mean, any of them. And there's at least newspaper articles and shit that you can find. Yeah. And it's not the time period. The Rollins Rodeo murders or, you know, Janelle Johnson or, I mean, several of them that we've covered. Shit, even Star Valley Jane Doe. You can at least find something. Like Star Valley, there wasn't much, but I did find like a 1-paragraph article in a paper just saying that this body had been discovered. If you find a news article about Ermalinda Garza Sherman, it repeats exactly this paragraph.
Yeah. This
paragraph that I just read to you is pretty much all there is.
The final word of her, and it's...
Yeah, I mean, it's literally all there is. It's so bizarre to me. And so, you know, when you try to find any sort of investigation information or anything like that, well, it's an open case, so there's nothing available publicly, but it's just mind-boggling to me that we're talking about a case that's this old.
Yeah.
I mean, almost 40 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't know anything. And we know her name. This isn't Unidentified Person 7519. We know this woman's name.
Should be so much more out there to find.
I don't even know what tribe she belonged to, what Native American tribe she belonged to. I know that she's a native. There's no tribe that's associated with her, which is bizarre as shit because that's a very simple DNA test. I don't understand why something like that wasn't conducted. Maybe they know who her family is,
right?
And they just don't say. I don't know. it's so strange because, you know, I mean, like the one source of that paragraph that I just read is Justice for Native People, which is like all about finding, you know, it's like the whole, what we're going to kind of be going into in season 2 of Rocky Mountain Reckoning. So I don't know. It's just bizarre. It's so bizarre to me. And it really struck me because I had these 2 cases that, of course, I wanted to cover both of them this season. UP 7519 and Ermalinda Garza Lee, and I had like a paragraph on each of them.
Yeah.
Try to put together a freaking episode with a paragraph. And it's
like, we'll talk to you for 10 minutes and the episode's done.
Yeah, and it's sad because, like I say, at least, I mean, we know her name, but what happened to her? Was she returned to her family? Was she laid to rest? You know, like you know what I'm saying? Like, is she in a pauper's grave just like she was unidentified? Or because there's no find a grave for her like there is for so many. There's nothing, just nothing. It's sad as shit. And it's bizarre. And
your brain is going to explode.
It makes your brain want to explode. And what really makes your brain want to explode is this is in a very, very, very low populated region of the United States, including a very limited number of very low populated states.
Yeah.
And we're having this conversation. Like, just extrapolate that over the entire United States. What does just New York state look like? Just California look like? Just Florida look? You know, I mean, the more populated states.
Yeah.
It just blows your mind to even think about it. It's so tragically sad. So by April of 1991, 3 women connected to the Great Basin corridor sat in very different investigative categories. Unidentified Person 719, Barbara Kaye Williams.
7519.
What did I say?
Just 719.
Unidentified Person 7519, Barbara Kaye Williams, Ermalinda Garza Sherman. On the surface, they share geography. All were found in desert terrain. All were located near major highways. All were women. All were homicide victims. That is where the similarities begin. The question is whether they meaningfully continue. So start with identification. Unidentified Person 7519 remains unnamed. Her cause of death, not even publicly disclosed. Her placement in the sagebrush, roughly a few hundred yards off of Highway 93A near West Wendover in June of 90. Barbara Kaye Williams, also found near a major interstate. At the time, that alignment, female interstate desert disposal, placed her squarely inside this emerging narrative, but we know that her asshat husband killed her. The geographic similarity did not equal behavioral linkage. Now look at Ermalinda. She was identified immediately. She was found roadside south of St. George. She suffered multiple gunshot wounds to the head and blunt force trauma. Unlike UP 7519, her cause of death is at least publicly known. Unlike Barbara, her offender remains unidentified. So what do we actually have? In Barbara's case, we have a gunshot homicide tied to an intimate partner. In Ermalinda's case, a roadside execution-style killing with additional blunt force trauma, no suspect known. And in UP 7519's case, a decomposed woman in the sagebrush. That's it. If there were an offender, what would we expect? A consistency in method, consistency in victim profile, consistency in concealment or staging behavior, consistency in forensic signatures. What we see instead are overlaps in geography and time frame, but divergence in resolution and, at least publicly, divergence in detail. Barbara's murder had a clear domestic context until she was identified. Ermalinda's case shows overt overkill, repeated gunshots to the head plus blunt force trauma, which may suggest personal rage. That is my theory, but no official theory has been disclosed. And I come to that theory from the extensive research I did, which I recreated right here on this podcast, which is pretty much reading a paragraph because that's all it's knowing. But just going off of what I know and the fact that that's obvious overkill, like, at least from what it sounds like, she was likely beaten to death and then shot, or shot and then beaten. So almost makes you think that there's a personal aspect to her crime beyond being like a serial victim. And UP 7519's case is the most opaque. Without a publicly released cause of death, we can't confirm whether her homicide aligns behaviorally with either of these two cases or any of the rest of them. The court
even said the word homicide with that one?
No, apparently cause and manner of death was too much work to fill out because I got shit. So, yeah, you're absolutely correct. We don't even know for sure that it was a homicide. I mean, you suspect that somebody dumped on the side of the road was a homicide, but you bring up a very, very, very valid point that I hadn't even considered, and that is she wasn't that far off the road. She could have been hit by a car and thrown that far. Probably not likely, but definitely possible. If you look where her body's found, she's like in between two roadways. It's an odd place to dump a body. Yeah. It's a very, very odd place to dump a body that remains unfound for maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but you do bring up a valid point. Maybe she froze to death. Maybe, who the hell knows? We don't know shit. So who the hell knows?
Yeah.
And because we know so little, actually, because we know nothing, it's impossible to tie anything together to say that they fit a pattern or they don't fit a pattern. Or, I mean, what pattern are we actually measuring? Geography, method, victimology, or simply proximity to asphalt in a region where highways run long and empty? 3 women, same era, same region, 3 very different investigative outcomes. The contrast is not a disruption of this season. It's part of understanding it. And I do got to say, the contrast with a couple of victims that we're going to be covering in our next episode, which I already kind of gave it away, is the Wyoming Jane Does. And the difference in the way those cases have been handled by Wyoming law enforcement. Yeah, I live in Wyoming. I'm proud to live in Wyoming. But the differences are stark as shit. And we're talking about repeated going back, repeated digging up DNA until we have 2 that have now been identified. And the nutty part about it is, and we've kind of talked about it, but the one of them was identified less than a year ago. I think it was May of last year when she was finally identified, which is exciting and everything.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about it. So anyway, so that's all I was able to pull in for these cases, but I did believe that they deserved an episode. So before we close tonight, we step away from theory, away from patterns, away from offender analysis, away from corridor maps and investigative silence, because at the center of every one of these cases is a life, a woman who existed beyond the moment that she was found. Unidentified Person 7519. I think when we started this, we had to give Star Valley Jane Doe a name. What name should we give you, unidentified? Because I can't do a victim tribute as Unidentified Person 719. So what name does she get? I mean, even if we called her Nevada, it's better than that, isn't it?
Yeah. Wendy?
Wendover? Sounds good to me. So Wendy, Barbara Kaye Williams, Ermalinda Garza Sherman, 3 women connected by geography, connected by a season, connected by the desert, but they were not just statistics. They were daughters, friends, family, people with histories that extended far beyond a roadside. Barbara Kaye Williams was more than a Jane Doe off Interstate 15. Her name was spoken long before it was matched to fingerprints. Ermalinda Garza Sherman was more than a cold case entry south of St. George. She was known. She was loved. She was someone's Linda. An unidentified person, 7519. Wendy, though we don't know her name, was not born a number. She had a voice once. She had people once. She had a life before the sagebrush. So tonight we honor them not as a series in a corridor narrative, but as women whose stories deserve to be spoken clearly and without distortion. This is Edge of the Horizon by the J.J. Hawk Band. And this is for tonight's victims.
Shadows fade as the daylight bends, chasing echoes where the silence ends. Every heartbeat a call to begin. I'm running forward, not looking.
Barbara Kaye Williams was born in Florida. She grew up in a place where people knew her name long before Utah ever logged her as a number. She was someone's daughter, someone's child who once ran barefoot across warm ground, who once laughed in a kitchen, who once had plans that extended beyond 1991. When she and her husband left Florida and moved west, it wasn't supposed to end in a gravel turnout off Interstate 15. It wasn't supposed to end in silence. For 8 years, she lay in Utah, identified only as a Jane Doe, but somewhere in Florida, a mother worried, a mother who hadn't heard from her daughter, a mother who eventually filed a missing persons report because instinct told her that something was wrong. Barbara was not forgotten. She was delayed. And when her name was finally restored, it did more than solve a case. It returned her to her family. It allowed her to be mourned properly. It shifted her from Jane Doe back to Barbara. That matters because identity is dignity. Ermalinda Garza Sherman was 32 years old. 32. That is not an anonymous age. That is a life in motion. Old enough to have lived, young enough to have decades left to go. She was native. She was also known as Linda. Somewhere that name was spoken with familiarity, with affection, with shorthand only family and friends used. Her life did not begin on a roadside south of St. George. It did not begin in a cold case file. She was part of a community. And like too many Indigenous women in the Mountain West, her story entered public awareness only after violence. She was beaten. She was shot multiple times, left near a roadway, but that violence is not her identity. Her identity is the 32 years that came before it. The people who knew her, the spaces that she occupied, the history that she carried. Her case remains open, which means someone out there knows more than what has been said. Someone remembers where she was, who she was with, what happened. Until the truth surfaces, what remains certain is this: she deserved safety. She deserved protection. She deserved more time. And then there's Wendy, unidentified person 7519. We do not know her real name. We do not know where she grew up. We do not know what she sounded like. We do not know who is still waiting somewhere without answers. But we do know this: she was estimated to be between 50 and 59 years old, which means she had lived a full half century before she was left in sagebrush outside of West Wendover. 50 years of birthdays, of routines, of stories, of work, of people. She wore a purple polyester pantsuit. That detail survives because fabric does not forget as quickly as memory sometimes does. Somewhere, someone once saw her wear that outfit. Somewhere, someone once heard her voice. She was not born unidentified person. She was a woman with a history, and even if the public record cannot yet restore her name, that does not erase her humanity. The desert held her for decades, but it does not get to define her. 3 women, different lives, different investigative outcomes, one corridor that connected them in death, but not in identity. Barbara Kaye Williams, Ermalinda Sherman, and Wendy, the woman we still only officially know as Unidentified Person 7519. We speak their names, and we hold space for the one that we do not yet know, because until every name is restored, our work is not finished. So that concludes this episode of Dark Dialogue Rocky Mountain Reckoning. If you believe in action over outrage, consider joining the Dark Dialogue Collective. This is not a donation tier, it's boots on the ground volunteer work. Physical searches, victim support, direct assistance to families who are still waiting for answers. If you want to stand up in the real world, that's where you do it.
We also invite you to participate in our adoptive victim program at darkdialogue.com. These are unresolved cases only. You can adopt a victim, research their case, work to identify unnamed remains, or help pursue the name of an unidentified offender. Real cases, real research, real impact. Our full victim tribute blog posts are available at www.darkdialogue.com, where each life is remembered in detail and preserved permanently.
And let me just say, we have victims tonight, 2 of them that are available for adoption. So if you want to help us out financially, you can do so on Patreon, patreon.com/Dark Dialogue Pod. We got a lot of cool stuff going on up there for members only. Coffee, which was primarily for one-time support. That's ko.fi.com/Dark Dialogue. You can get all of my long-term writing at darkdialoguecrime.substack.com, and be sure to check out the merch shop through our website, darkdialogue.com, and go to the shop button. For case tips, collaboration, or inquiries, or kudos, or call us whatever you want to call us, you can reach us at info@darkdialogue.com.
And don't forget to stay connected with the entire Dark Dialogue network. Dark Dialogue, the main show, Distilled, Unraveled Truths, Gallows and Gunfights, and Shadow Chat sessions. If this episode mattered to you, help us grow this work. Like the episode, follow the show, subscribe on your platform, leave a review. On YouTube, hit the thumbs up and ring the bell so you never miss an episode, and share it with someone who believes that truth still matters.
We'll see you the next time. Stay safe out there, look out for each other, keep listening, and make the guilty face the reckoning.